Chapter 6, Short Stories for Short People. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Penny Coons. Short Stories for Short People by Alicia Stuart Aspinwall. Chapter 6, The Tiger on the Hudson. Harry was spending his Christmas vacation at Uncle Ned's. Uncle Ned had a fine place on the Hudson, a place dear to the boy's heart. There was always sure to be snow there long after it had left other places. There were horses, which meant sleigh rides, unlimited hills, which meant coasting, and lastly, dear Uncle Ned and Aunt Susie, who had no children of their own, and who were very, very fond of their nephew. In the house, Harry's favorite room was his uncle's den, which, by the way, wasn't a den at all, but the biggest room in the house. The walls were covered with guns, bows and arrows, odd-looking swords, and pictures of strange places and animals, for Uncle Ned had been a great traveler, and had been at the places and seen the animals himself. And as he had a big stock of hair-bristling stories to tell about his thrilling adventures and escapes, he was a rare companion. There was a wide fireplace in the room, a good fireplace, which knew its duty and performed it well, taking its smoke decently up the chimney and not spitting it out into the room, as so many spiteful fireplaces do. There was no carpet on the floor, but across one end of the room lay a magnificent rug, the skin of a royal Bengal tiger, which measured 10 feet from tip to tip. Uncle Ned had killed the tiger himself, although Harry had never heard the story. One time in the summer, when his uncle and he were bathing, Harry had seen on his uncle's arm a long, cruel red scar extending from shoulder to wrist. "What is that?" said the boy. "The Bengal tiger and I know all about that," was the answer. "And when you are 10 years old, I will tell you the story. You are too young now." And Harry had not forgotten. He was 10 years old on the 12th of December, and his first question to his uncle when he came this time for his Christmas holiday was, "Will you tell me the story of the tiger, Uncle? For I am now 10, you know." Uncle Ted smiled and said, "Come into my den at 5 this afternoon, and I will tell you all about it." So after lunch, and after 2 hours spent in coasting, Harry went into the den. His uncle had not yet come in, and he found, on looking at the funny little bronze clock on the mantelpiece, that it was only 4:15. Harry was tired, and he threw himself into Uncle Ned's big leather chair to wait. It had already grown quite dark outside, for the December days were short, but the room was not dark, for there was a glorious fire blazing triumphantly up the chimney, shining upon all the curious, interesting things in the room, and showing distinctly each mark, spot, and stripe on the beautiful tiger skin. The tiger's head had been stuffed, and 2 fearful, lifelike green eyes had been placed into it. Harry used to be quite afraid to look into them, they were so awfully real. He was looking at them now, when suddenly he sprang to his feet in utter horror, for he saw the eyes had begun to move. Slowly, slowly they looked around the room, and rested at last upon him. He met their gaze, and having once looked into those cruel, green, glaring eyes, he was entirely unable to move. For fully a minute did those two stare at each other silently, while the small bronze clock ticked busily on, and the fire snapped and crackled its way merely up the wide chimney. Then the tiger opened his mouth, and in a rough, hoarse voice spoke. "I heard your uncle say that he would tell you how I, the king of beasts, the royal Bengal tiger, came to lie here. I will tell you first my side of the story. Sit still and listen." Indeed, Harry was quite unable to do anything else. "My home was on the banks of the river Ganges, and I had a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful children. Here, the tiger's voice became husky. We had a happy home, he continued, near an old deserted temple. Plenty of water we had, a pleasant climate, and enough to eat. There was a village not very far away, and there were herds of cattle, stray monkey, and occasionally children. Ah, those happy days, long gone, long gone. The tiger seemed to be full of feeling. Each morning we all went down to the river gangs for a drink, I leading the way, followed by my gentle wife and my 3 beautiful children. Then back again, and if game was at hand, and I kept the latter well stocked, we ate our breakfast. My wife was busy all morning teaching the little ones to hunt, and they did well. The dear little things, they were my children. They killed the smaller creatures, and once one of them, perhaps the bravest of the 3, brought in a small monkey, which he himself had killed unaided. You can imagine what a proud day that was for his mother and me. Oh, my dear tender wife and innocent children, where are you now? Here, the tiger sobbed aloud. Well, he continued, when able to speak, one night I was crouching near the village, watching for prey, when I overheard a conversation between 2 natives. It seemed that a white man had arrived at the village the night before, and that he intended to make the end of me and my family. Oh, how I roared in my rage when I heard that, how I lashed my tail from side to side as I hurried home to tell my wife. Shall we not go further into the thicker, denser forest, said she, further from the haunts of man? But I turned fiercely upon her. I will defend you, I roared. I will defend you. 3 days after this, I was taking a nap in a clump of bushes when I heard an odd crackling noise. Keeping perfectly still, I crouched and listened. The burrows directly over my head were now parted, and there stood a man not 2 feet away. Never had I been so near a man before. He was a native, and his eyes seemed to have a strange effect on me, for when I looked into them, I was powerless to move. He grew very pale, and his teeth chattered, but he kept his eyes steadily fixed on me while he slowly moved backwards. When I could no longer see those strange eyes, I sprang, but at last not upon him. He had just escaped me, and was running for his life. I was after him like a flash, when suddenly I saw a white man standing directly in my way, and who did not seem in the least afraid. At this, my rage knew no bounds, for man always fled from me in terror. I lashed my tail savagely, growling all the time. I opened my mouth that the white man might see my long, pointed teeth, and I put my glorious sharp claws in and out, keeping my eyes upon him all the time. He was a tall, thin man, with brown fur covering the lower part of his face. Why did he stand so fearlessly there? How did he dare to brave me? In his hand he held a common black stick, which he had raised to his shoulders and held pointed at me. Roaring louder in my rage, I crouched lower and lower, and then, gathering myself together, was just about to spring upon him, when suddenly, without a moment's warning, the common little black stick in the man's hand burst. Out of the end rushed fire and flame. Bang! Bang! Something hit me. A red cloud came before my eyes. I knew no more, and that's how I came to be here. The next thing I knew, I was lying in this quiet room with my new eyes and ears. Oh, why did they take from me my beautiful ears? And here I have been ever since. I am not the tiger I was, and yet I shouldn't wonder if, after all, there were enough of me left to attack, say, a small boy. Harry began to feel exceedingly uncomfortable at these words. The tiger's voice, which had been soft, now grew louder. I am hungry. I have had nothing to eat for 10 years. I am hungry, he repeated, and this time his voice rose almost to a roar. For a moment There was silence in the room, and then Harry, who was staring, fascinated, saw that the creature was actually coming toward him. Slowly he crept. He saw white teeth glimmering in the firelight, and his big green eyes snapping angrily. "Yes, I am hungry," he roared for the third time. And then poor Harry realized what the tiger's horrible intentions was, to satisfy that hunger by eating him. The poor boy's teeth chattered. He trembled violently. In another minute the creature would be upon him. How could he defend himself? The poker! Springing to his feet and seizing the big iron poker, Harry advanced upon the tiger. Meantime, the shovel and tongs which stood with the poker followed the laws of all fire irons and fell with a crash on the hearth. Roused by this noise, Harry became suddenly conscious, and he was standing quiet alone in the room, fiercely brandishing the poker at nothing. Rubbing his eyes, he looked about him, at the quiet room, at the fire which had now burned low, and lastly, and rather timidly, he looked at the tiger-skin rug lying flatly and innocently upon the floor. Just then the door opened, and he heard his uncle's cheery voice. "Well, boysy, are you ready for a gruesome tiger tale?" "Why, uncle," said Harry, "I have just heard it." "Heard it?" said Uncle Ned in astonishment. "From whom?" "From the tiger himself." And then Uncle Ned looked more carefully at the boy's flushed face and tousled hair, laughed long and loud. "You were dreaming, little boy," he said at last. "Oh, uncle, it was too real to be a dream. I will tell you all about it." And he told him all. When he had finished, Uncle Ned was very much astonished. "The story is true, just as it really happened," said he. My native guide came running back to me with a white face, shouting, "The tiger! The tiger!" When out he sprang. I had just time to put my gun to my shoulder and fire. Fortunately, my aim was true, for he fell at my feet. I did not, however, know about Madam Tiger or the three little tigeresses, and your friend omitted to tell you that before we parted he gave me this, and Uncle Ned showed the cruel scar on his arm. I went up to him as he lay stretched out at the full length on the ground, supposing, of course, that he was quite dead, and well, I found that he wasn't. But in the main, Harry, the story is true, just as I would have told it myself, and it is certainly very odd that you should have dreamed it. The following year, Harry visited his aunt and uncle in September. One day, when his uncle was in his den writing, the boy came in with 3 tiger lilies. Going to the tiger, he placed them under his paw. "And why, dear?" said the uncle. "Well, uncle, I know, of course, that it was a very bad tiger to scratch you," said Harry. "But, oh, it wasn't the fault of his 3 dear little baby tigers, and he loved them dearly. He said so himself, you know. And so I brought him these 3 tiger lilies, one for each." End of chapter 6. Recorded by Penny Coons, 6 May 2015.